So, good day everyone. My name is Raymond Irwin P. Pambuan, the head of the Cloud Infrastructure Department, here with another event. And this time we'll have it as an offline or an asynchronous event where we will have a recording instead of the live version. So, for today's event, we will discuss LocalStack, house made local. So, what is LocalStack? So, LocalStack is basically AWS running on your local machine. And how, you may ask, you can see here a logo of Docker. If you're not familiar with Docker, it runs instances using containers so that the instance is contained and isolated, and it has its own environment so that it runs smoothly without any external uh, disruptions. So it's basically similar to running a virtual machine, but instead of running a whole operating system, it only runs an application or an instance. So in this case, we will run the whole AWS, well, not the whole, local stack does have its limitations, but we'll run most of AWS services in this application, including its API, the functionalities, uh, the relations between the services, and so on. So it's basically a cloud service emulator. Uh, it is an emulator because originally here in this diagram, so you can see AWS services are hosted in actual Amazon-owned servers. So since it's cloud computing, the uh, cloud computing happens in their servers, but we are able to access them because they have given us access to those services as it is part of the internet and it is part of their business model. So as you can see in this diagram, from our local machine, we need to still access again Amazon servers, which of course contains some latency, and we'll also use additional resources. So we'll use the internet, use some internet speed, and we'll use the actual servers of Amazon, which uses a lot of their resources in their data centers. Sorry. So it's bidirectional since we send data and we receive data. Uh, but this arrow is not really something that has an input or output, but it just tells us that all the Amazon Web Services we have today runs on Amazon service servers. Almost all, if not all. And in the previous diagram, here is local stack. So we are running it directly from our own device. No need for additional um, travel over the oceans of our internet cables in under the oceans for that huge amount of latency. It's considered huge because it's still far distance. Imagine going from the Philippines to Singapore to and going back just to create your S3 bucket. So now that puts us to why we should use local stack. So again, I've mentioned that there is the latency factor. So why use local stack? First is to save time, of course. So since you're running it locally, your local computer will be the one responsible in transmitting all the data. So every API call, uh, every write, read, and delete, and update operations are run in your local machine. So it saves a lot of time for developers. So why do we need to save time? So usually when you're in the developing stage, you just want to mimic or at least simulate the real world, like what you are what's your goal, what is your goal. So if you are hosting a game server, so you should emulate a game server in your local machine. If you are hosting a website, So you can also host the website in your local machine. You will use the local ports of your local machine. And then the API calls will come to your back end and front end. So you have Lambda for that. And you also have API Gateway and S3. So you can also have DynamoDB if you have some sort of data. So a lot of time is saved when you're in a developer. When you're a developer and you're using LocalStack. So instead of using Amazon itself, you can use LocalStack. But still, there are different advantages and disadvantages for both. One example is when you're using AWS, you're actually using their services, and you're uh, you're like already in the real world. But that could affect again. The next topic is resources. So as I mentioned earlier, we use the resources for the internet and then the servers that AWS own to provide the cloud services in their data centers. So we also save resources. So you only use your own device. So that's a lot more power saving in the wide scale, in a large scale, considering the amount of developers that utilize AWS and it's free tier. So there's a lot of resources saved. Uh, then next is the cost. So all of these three are really interconnected with each other and also related most of the time. So cost. We may know that Amazon Web Services it's not really free. We have a free tier, but there's still some underlying cost, especially when you're transferring from a small to large scale development, and you're also aiming for an enterprise spot. So you save a lot of cost. You only need uh, less to none money since LocalStack also have its premium tier. So one thing to mention also is that LocalStack is more difficult uh, to configure and to use. It requires like some knowledge about again Docker, as I mentioned earlier. Need some knowledge with Docker. We also need some knowledge with CLI, the command line interface, since we will be using that a lot. So AWS does have its CLI, but it's again connected to the actual AWS. So if you're not a CLI person, you're a console person, don't worry. We have an option in this activity that still uses the a GUI, a user interface, similar to the console, but not totally. It is very limited. So unless again you're a CLI type person, I still suggest you do the Amazon free tier. But this is still a uh, good beginning tutorial so that you can actually utilize the benefits of local stack if you're truly aiming to be a developer for AWS or that uses AWS. So how to use local stack? Shortly after we will move on to our demonstration. But basically, local stack again it runs on Docker. So before I end my lecture, uh, I'd like to again remind you all that LocalStack is an amazing innovation for developers such as me or aspiring developers, again, such as me. So we'll move on to the demonstration shortly after. Thank you for listening. So hello, now we will start with the demonstration of our activity. So here I have the initial repository, uh, which contains the file for the code file, but it will also be included in the instructions and the README for the instructions. So uh, here we have getting started with LocalStack. So as you may read, LocalStack offers a comprehensive local AWS simulation. Most of these were discussed in the lecture, so I'll skip to that. This A disclaimer here tells that the activity uses the Windows 10 or 11 OS. So I'm pretty sure that it is compatible with Windows 10 too. But here I have a Windows 11 device. So that may affect the success rate of this activity. Uh, Also note that this repository shown in the demonstration is temporary, so there might be changes or any additions like screenshots for more clarity. So let's move on to the requirements. So first you need VS Code. So if you click this and open with new tab, you can download directly the VS Code installer for Windows 10 and 11. You also have the option to uh, use different deliverables like the .zip or the CLI install. So everything is contained here and should be easy. If you have issues, just search or comment down below, or you may contact me directly. So next we need to install Docker. So again, the link is already included here. So uh, usually Windows desktop computers or laptops have either uh, the 64 x86 architecture. So if you download the installer, so here are the requirements. Uh, Usually all devices are 64-bit now. So if you have a lower device, then unfortunately you might be unable to complete the activity. So if you scroll down, you can see here how to install Docker desktop on Windows. So Docker is needed so that we can launch the LocalStack instances that simulates AWS services in an instance. So you might need a large file space for this, like probably more than 10 gigabytes overall, or around 10 gigabytes. So you can download the installer.exe, which I believe is here. So if you click that, then it will download here for me. So I'm using free download manager for this. But I already did this, so I'll skip into this. So after installing, the steps are also included here. And again, if there's any issues, just comment or contact me directly. So you can verify this if you have Docker by entering Docker V and Docker Compose -v in command prompt. So let me do that real quick. So since I already have it installed, I can skip to this step. So if I type in Docker V, I have the version 27.4.0. It might be updated now since I installed this a while back. And Docker Compose. So what are the difference between these two? Well, Docker is the actual engine that runs the instances, and it is the one the application uses. And Docker Compose is for the YAML configuration. So this is similar to scripting. So you have a configuration set as a YAML file or .yml. So you can see here the example, and you can also see it here. So that you may instantly run the instance using a modular file, like such as this one. So you'll see that later in the example. But I also would like to show you the Docker desktop. So once you install Docker desktop, of course you'll have Docker. So here we have the Docker interface. If you're prompted to sign in, I think it's optional. You can browse as a guest. So here we have the some containers you may have, which contain such instances. So I'll go back here later and show you and explain you what are these elements or these details. So next you need to install Commandeer. So uh, I recommend installing this just to verify and have a user interface similar to AWS, since not everyone is inclined with the CLI or the command line interface, such as command prompt. Since LocalStack is an instance that runs the AWS services using its engine, uh, it is not really like the AWS console as you may see, uh, such as this one. So you may not see any console similar to this, and some people may prefer having a UI. So you can download Commandeer, and I think it's straightforward. Just click download for Windows and then install. And again, if there's any issues, comment or uh, contact me directly. So you also need to install the AWS CLI so that we may interact with the AWS API running locally to from our command prompt. So I think here are the instructions for Windows. These are also the instructions I followed, so I'm pretty sure there will be no issues. So just follow the instructions here. So you can download the MSI installer, or alternatively, so I won't discuss this too much since these are already straightforward in download instructions. And make sure you have enough space for downloading the softwares. So we need to verify with AWS double dash version. So here you can see that I have it installed on my Windows 11 device. And I'm also using a AMD, so I have the uh, corresponding computer instructions in. So you may also be uh, you are needed you are required to configure the AWS credentials. So if you enter it, you are prompted to enter, I believe, the access key, a secret key, the region, and the output. So if I try to copy this and enter it, my command prompt, yeah. So here you have your access key or secret key, the region, and JSON. So mine is already configured. So the access key test gave me this one. Uh, but for the sake of this activity, I will change it back to the following values. So upon checking, these keys are the keys I have entered for uh, the project we are doing. So I really need to reconfigure this. So just type house configure, and then we type the keys, and then keep these two the same. But if you are doing this for the first time, you need to type it, or if these are different. So that's it. And let's just double check, and there it is. So it should be fine now. So here are the objectives for this activity. So we need to set up LocalStack with Docker. That's why we downloaded Docker. We verify the instance with a browser. So in my case, I'm using Microsoft Edge, but you can use Chrome, Opera GX, or any other browser. Then we have Commandeer for the UI. So we will also demonstrate the LocalStack functionality with AWS S3. So it should function similar to AWS S3 and its API. So for part 1, we need to open Docker Desktop. So without Docker Desktop open, I believe the engine is not running live on your device. So I think you should have it open just to be safe. And then we need to create a folder named Docker Compose LocalStack in your preferred directory and open it with VS Code. So you can use File Explorer. You can use File Explorer. Just type in anything. Uh, I mean, type the corresponding name. But I like to use Git Bash for this since that's my preference. But again, you can use it. So just let me type a new folder. So just for testing, and then open it with VS Code. So how do you do that? So usually what I do, if I do it with this, so if you're running Windows 11, you can use show more options, and you can see if you have VS Code installed, you can open it with code, and it shows you new folder. So for the GitHub, I mean the Git Bash method. So if you have Git Bash, just open it up, navigate to the uh, directory that you have. So I'm gonna display the existing directories in this folder. So I have a lot. So but this is since this is for our demo, I'll make a new one. So LocalStack, AWS CC, or let me rename that. So we have that, and then under here we uh, create the, well, I won't change the name actually, but if you can see here, I already have such folder since I have already tested this, and I believe you can see it here. Yeah. So I'll use this name. So you can also use different names. It doesn't matter. I believe in this activity. So we open it with VS Code. So to do that with git bash, just type code and then dot. Well, notice that we are not in the directory. So we need to that is an operator in Linux that tells you to open the to that tells you the current directory. So that's the target, the current directory. So we can also explicitly type the folder since we just made it, and so that we have lesser lines to consume. So here we have the Visual Studio Code. Then let me just set that up. So let's move on to the next step. So you can create a file named docker compose.yml. So and we can just copy the following contents and just save. Don't forget to save. So here's just a template for Docker, which I believe will pull LocalStack from Docker Hub. Docker Hub is similar to GitHub, but it's usually for Docker instances. So I think LocalStack is contained in Docker Hub as an open source image. So we have the image with the LocalStack latest. For environment, we just set the different region to the closest region to the Philippines. You have the edge port. So the edge port is the local port that you will use in your device. If you're not familiar with ports, that is a networking topic, and it's out of scope for our discussion, but just a introduction. So the ports, our local device have a lot of ports. Some have specific purposes, such as port 22 for SSH, I believe. You have, I think, well, let's just search a TCP port. So here we can see that. So you can search it up also. But here are the common ones. The 22 for SSH. SSH is remote connecting to a device or to, yeah, a device remotely. So let's go back. Here we have the ports that if 4566 is not available, it will look for other one until 4580. So I believe these are ports that we can use. And if we search that up, I think this has a meaning. So while waiting for that load, let's move on. So we have the volume. So this is just where will contain the the files, like the some dependencies maybe for our instance. So this, since this is not loading, just never mind that. So to launch the local stack instance, we need to open a terminal. So go to terminal in VS Code, or just simply enter Control Shift this reverse apostrophe. So here, if you don't have git bash, it's okay, but I really prefer using that. But for now, I'll just use PowerShell since it's a default. And there might be some differences with the commands. So we are instructed to enter docker compose /up. And the output should contain some sort of details about the instance. So if you enter that, so here I didn't have any issues. So there is only one warning. The version is obsolete, so it is ignored. So I believe it's this one. So, well, I think it defaults to a latest version if it doesn't work, if it's obsolete. So that might be because the reference for this code is also old. So, but I used a external reference, which with some tweaking for this tutorial. So here we have some information about our running instance, and it can also be viewed in Docker desktop. And as you can see, here are some basic information, but there are limited information. So if we go back to Docker desktop, and as you can see earlier, we did not have this one. These are my past instances. So it is green since it is live. So we verify that this instance is live and it's connected to localhost 4566. Localhost is the local DNS for the local IP address, which acts as the local server also. And we're using 4566 as its directory port. So our terminal provides such details, and if we are instructed to open it to the browser, you can enter this URL. But here I'm gonna try to enter it here. So as you can see, there was a GET request since the server was launched here in the browser. But there's an error since I believe this endpoint is a normal GET for a bucket, so an S3 list object. So we are gonna use a different endpoint, such as this one, just to view what services we have. So note that we have Lambda, S3, and EC2 as the services we want to enable for our local stack. So we have here S3, we have here EC2 available, S3 running, and we have Lambda available. And for next, optionally, you can enter this URL to view I believe, a Swagger here. If you're not familiar with Swagger, it is the API, the UI or a UI generator for the API. So I believe I have Swagger also installed here. So it's open API. I have it installed. If you're developing API, this is very helpful. But this API was also used. Open API was also used with Swagger to create this page. So this is just to test out the API. So you can also explore this if you're if you like experimenting, but this is out of scope for our activity. So let's move on. So now we open Commandeer. So if you're still not if you still don't have Commandeer installed, uh, you need you might need it for this activity. So in my case, I believe I have Commandeer. So I'll open it up. And for the initial open, I don't think this will be the screen. But if I were to log in, it opens up an external one. So for the case of this activity, I'll make a new account. So I'll sign in with a Google account of mine. And just follow the authorization. I believe it should sync here. So here, so actually I have an account for this one. So I don't think this will be the setup. But if you're asked to set it up, just follow the instructions here. But again, for the case of the demo, I'll try to create a new account. So let me just set it up. So here I used a different account, but it's still showing a previous configuration. So, but I saw a plus sign here. So I think we can create another LocalStack account. And I think this is the one that you see in your initial launch of Command D. So we need to set up the account and use the following settings. So we have an account type. But in the plus sign, I already selected LocalStack, so that's no problem with me. So, and we have the default values. We have here I believe these are preloaded, and if not, yeah, I think you can select. So just select which one you are running right now. So you can see that here. So the name and then dash LocalStack one, as you can see here. And for the keys, just type test. For the URL, use the same URL so that we can connect to that server. And then for the nickname, I suggest you follow this format. So I'll put nickname Raymond. And I believe everything should be left as default. So if I save that and go there, then it will fetch some data from the existing LocalStack instance. And I believe for the region, you can select it here if you're not prompted yet. So we just refresh Commandeer. And if you are prompted to allow firewall, just click allow. I don't know if that's the case for everyone, but if you are prompted, allow it so that it's able to connect with the local ports. And while waiting, we can create a S3 bucket using the CLI. So we can use a terminal in VS Code. So click new terminal. And before that, I'd like to show some API calls here. Since I am using the Commandeer, it's calling some API methods. So if we go back to our VS Code and create and enter this command, then we can we have made the bucket. So entering this command will make you a bucket, S3 bucket. So if this doesn't work, I believe there will be some issues if you haven't configured your AWS, as you can see here in the CLI. And if there are other issues, just feel free to comment or contact me directly. So go back to command here. So I hope it's refreshed already. And under AWS here in the left, you can see the different AWS services. So we need to go to S3 and then dashboard. So as you can see here, we have added a bucket, but it's not yet showing. So if there's nothing showing, you can try to refresh this. So it tells me there's a network failure. Let me try to resolve this first. So I figured out, since I have different accounts, there might be an issue regarding the having multiple accounts. So I'm just gonna delete this account that I just created, and I'm gonna also delete this account and delete this account. So now let's make a new account from as fresh account. So if you're not yet asked to select a LocalStack account, just select that, and again type in the format that we must follow. So here we have my keys and the container discussed earlier. So here must be the active container you have. So this is that one in my case, since it has the following, then its name convention. So I'll cc localstack /demo -localstack. So this is important. The URL must be 4566 since it is set as our edge port. So keep the rest default, keep this default, and save. And then let's select the region we set for this one. So again, if you had that similar issue, I think this won't work. So let's wait for the refreshing data, and let's go back to VS Code just to discuss something. So earlier, I called the API to create a bucket using the CLI. So using the MB command, s3mb command, with the endpoint URL where our command is hosted, where our local stack is hosted for the local AWS. So if we go back here, this was called earlier, where the bucket so sorry for that. I just tried to find where it was logged. So again, the bucket was called here in the logs. As you can see, there was a create bucket that was called, and status 200 meaning it was successful for the API call. So let's go back to command here, and again let's go back to S3, and now we see here the bucket we created. So if you refresh, it should be here, and if not, there's probably errors with the credentials or anything with the configuration here. So just make sure you follow the instructions and everything is matching. So here we have the bucket we created, and as you remember in our instructions, the command there named the bucket as awscc/mu-demo. So that is this bucket. If you view here, we don't have files. So now we are going to create a file. Let's go back to GitHub. And it is a task here that we go back to VS Code. We create a file named test.txt and enter any text to the file and save it. So let's just do that. Also here you can view the volume created as in here. But that is out of scope for the discussion of this course. So let us try to create a file here. So same with test.txt. This is a simple text file. So let's just type hello world and your name. So you can type anything here. Just make sure it's unique. Since this will serve proof. So also be reminded to take screenshots of this activity. So the first screenshot is going to the dashboard and screenshotting this one. You must also screenshot Docker running. So make sure you have a screenshot of this page. And you can also screenshot the browser here. If you type in the localhost, yeah, screenshot this also. But that will be indicated in the revised README, so don't worry about that. So now next we save this, so mine is already saved, and then we will enter this command to add the file to the local S3 bucket. So it calls again the endpoint, S3. Now we have CPU, which is copy. We copy this file text.txt as it is in the local directory we are in now. So LCC LocalStack demo, that is our folder now. And that file is in folder, so we copy this file to the destinations from target to destination. I mean source to destination. So this is that bucket. So it should be successful. Let's verify in the log. So we have here a put object. So the put object was called to put the object in the bucket. So we need to verify that. So we go back to command here. Select this. And if it's not seen, you can simply refresh. And in my case, it's already seen. So here you can verify the file. So select it. And you can see here the file here is added. Hello world, Raymond. So make sure to also take a screenshot of this page to prove that you have accomplished the activity. So basically, we're almost done, or we actually accomplished the activity. There's just one last thing we need to do now. So we just need to verify in the CLI. So for all the CLI people out there, you can verify it using now the ls command. So it's very simple. These commands, we have the make bucket, cp for copy, and ls for list. So we list the bucket. And here we have the contents, which contains the object test.txt. So basically that is the accomplishment of this activity. Make sure to screenshot this also, this terminal, that you worked with AWS commands. And for the cleanup, it is optional. But again, if you're saving space and you want to clean the software, or you have you need to uninstall the software, save space, just type the keyboard shortcut window R and type appwiz.cpl so that you can select the apps you want to uninstall. So if you want to uninstall command here, just click command here and uninstall. So also, if you forgot, I almost forgot, but you must end this Docker instance. So just simply enter the keyboard shortcut Control C, and it should stop, like gracefully stopping, as you can see here. And to verify if it stopped, go back to Docker, and the green icon here should not be green anymore. So that is another one for the cleanup. LocalStack is also supporting various services. So we go back here. Basically supports this. There's only some that are free to use. Some are paid to use if they are used in its actual form. But there's a mimic form they offer, and you'll understand it. Uh, for example, for EC2, since an EC2 is a virtual machine, running it with LocalStack requires to run a virtual instance inside that LocalStack instance. So there might be more instances under your Docker, but that is for the premium tier. So for the free tier, it only mimics a running EC2. So you can experiment if you want with LocalStack, and there are various limitations. But for simple services, there are some very helpful opportunities, especially if you are inclined to the CLI, since LocalStack is more on CLI focused, and there are limitations in what you can do with command here. So, but it also acts as a console, similar to the AWS console. So that is all for my demonstration. I hope you liked it, and if you have any questions, just comment down below or contact me directly. I will provide my contact details in the description. Thank you all.